Hello everyone, just a quick word from your friendly editor/husband. For all of you who listen to So I'm Watching This Show and own an Android device, do me a favor. Go to the Google Play Store and download the Podcast Republic app. It's a fantastic app that allows you to get all of your favorite podcasts directly on your Android devices. I use the app and love it. I can search for the podcasts I want to listen to, select them as favorites, and have them all just a click away. Make sure you set So I'm Watching the Show as a favorite so you don't miss any new episodes. Again, the app is Podcast Republic, available on your Android device. Thanks!
I fell down a Twitter hole that I thought should have been easy, and it was not. I saw a tweet from someone I follow, and they were like, this is quite possibly the worst take there is. And I was like, well, I gotta know.
I'm sure it wasn't, was it?
It was a pretty bad take.
Okay.
in a world of run amok with bad takes.
Yeah.
It was towards the bottom. But it was every single comment. I swear to God, I got 50 comments deep before somebody finally mentioned a name.
You do go so hard into these things. I see the take and I'm like, that's a bad take, and I move on.
Well, I didn't know what it was about. I needed to know what it was about.
Oh, okay.
Because the person was like, I don't consider it stunning and brave to leave your family to fulfill your sexuality. And I was like, what?
What on earth?
I was like, who? What?
Spill the tea already.
Yeah, and I'm not kidding. I went 50 comments deep nobody would use a name. And there was 3 comments where what are we talking about? And nobody responded to it. And finally somebody said, good morning, Britain. And I was like, oh, am I in an English? And so, yeah, some English talk show host came out late in life.
Oh my God, what a... Unbelievable.
Philip
what
Schofield, I guess.
Ugh, whose fucking business? Unbelievable. I'm mad now.
Hello, everybody. I am Will.
And I'm Kristen.
And this is So I'm Watching the Show. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the 2013 rom-com Warm Bodies.
Yeah, yay.
Oh, that doesn't work.
No,
Warm bodies feel good. I can't deny my hobbies.
Great. Now we have to pay Carly Rae Jepsen for that.
I'll give her the $40. That was... I love you, Carly. That was...
Nobody's licensing warm blood, though, so you're probably right.
In case you don't know, it was a 2013 paranormal romantic zombie comedy film written and directed by Jonathan Levine and based on a book. Mm-hmm. That's why it's good.
That's certainly part of it, though. They did change a lot.
Did they? Okay. Yeah. It stars Nicholas Hoult, Teresa Palmer, Annalee Tipton, and John Malkovich.
And Dave Franco. Mm-hmm. Way to bury the lead.
Well, and somebody else. I don't know. Rob Corddry. There's people in it, but... Did you see this in the theater?
I don't think so.
It's one of those movies that came out, and this was a good time, the early to mid 20 teens. Mm-hmm. There was a handful of movies that were moderately budgeted. They were solid genre that came out, they did their job, and people forgot they existed.
And they didn't have massive movie stars in them.
Yeah, and I remember it came out, and I remember hearing it was good, and I remember being very about it, where I was like, I should see that, but I just didn't get around to it. And I think what happened with me was I think I had heard enough buzz, and I want to do this more so back in the Blu-ray era. We're moving fastly into VOD, but if I had $20 or whatever while shopping, I would just go get a movie that I had heard was good. And I have a really good track record with it. They end up being some of my favorite movies. And so I remember getting this movie and watching it. I was home in Maryland for some reason at the time. And I remember watching it that night and the next morning being with my mom and being like, you have to watch this movie. You're going to love it. And it's so weird and it's so funny and it's so good. Every time I watch it, and I think it's key that I don't watch it too much.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've only seen it 3 times.
I've seen it a little bit more, but it's kind of Enchanted that way, where it's you can't watch it once a year. It's you got to put some time in between it. But when you revisit it, you're like, this might be a perfect movie.
Yeah.
Watching it this time, I was realizing I don't have a single complaint about it. And in fact, it actually brings some, I think, necessary, crucial elements to the table. So,
like what specifically?
It's zombie. It's a zombie movie. The basis of the movie, if you don't know, is, which this supports one of, an ongoing theory of mine, that there is no such thing as an original idea.
Okay.
And anytime that you see something where you're like, this is really original, it's usually a take on something as old as time. And this is a mashup of Romeo and Juliet and Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
And it just took advantage of there was like a teen genre, like sci-fi horror craze at the moment with Twilight and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And zombies were big.
Yeah.
They were like Hansel. They're so hot. And
so hot right now.
like I said, it was moderately budgeted. It was just so well made. It stayed so much in its lane, which is largely a lane it created. Like, So one of the things I think it brings is, you and me have talked a little bit off and on doing the show about zombie movies and how there's a lot of genres, but zombie movies are really unique for several reasons. And they strangely have a wide appeal. I mean, something like The Walking Dead, for an eon, it felt like was the most popular show on TV. And because you've said that it's largely for you, it's the appeal of going back to like an agrarian society.
Sure. I mean, that's not just about zombies. It could be like anything. Like The Stand is very romantic that way. And like there's a romance to like 90% of the population dying, and you have to start from scratch with like seeds. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it brings the world to its very foundation, and you have to figure out what is salvageable and what isn't. And
yeah, I just think there's such a big feeling of romance and having to get quite literally back to your roots, and like you grow your own food. There's no internet, stuff like that. It just
you have to reestablish what society means and stuff. And
I want to make it clear, I could absolutely not hack it, but
it depends on
it does feel romantic.
Yeah, it depends on where in the outbreak we are and what the expectations of me are.
Like, if we could relatively easily make it to my dad's house, I think we'd be okay.
I used to feel the same way about my grandparents. Yeah. And so it's kind of like, there's a moment in this movie where he gives her a beer and she's like, I haven't had a beer in so long. And I actually said to you, I was like, it's interesting. I was like, because beer feels like one of the more urgent things. Like, I feel like we would be making beer and wine towards the front of the list. And I'm serious. I really do.
I definitely agree with you. I think one of the things about that about this movie specifically in that instance is that they are in a city, which honestly feels to me a little bit backwards, because I would think you would want to be out in the open, because it had to have taken so long and so much effort and so many bullets to clear those high-rise buildings, But however, I do think you're right. And when we were watching it, I brought it up because it's one of the literal first things that they do when they get to America in Outlander is they plant the like barley fields so that they can make whiskey the next year. And it's just like, because they use it for trading. It's like bartering for trading. Claire uses it for disinfectant. I agree with you. It should be one of alcohol is widely usable across all facets of life.
Well, and as I've said, celebration is such a fundamental component of humanity.
Yeah.
So much so that I was like, it's engineered into the Bible. The whole seventh day he rested. It's because life isn't worth living if there isn't something to look forward to.
Yeah.
So there are so many from different cultures and different histories and stuff. There's so many festivals and basically, everybody's got a party every so often. And I think it's necessary to a functioning society, and also even health benefits. I mean, there's times where you can't drink water, but you could drink wine, Yeah,
well, it's the same with beer, because it was, the water wasn't safe to drink, but you have to boil the water for beer. So you get rid of all the, nasty shit in it. So I definitely agree with that.
And this movie, it's very interesting because it spends very little time on the zombie outbreak. We don't really know what happens. And I think the only thing that's mild or that's really unrealistic, I just remembered the bit I was going to open the episode with. I was going to say, I don't know. I don't like this movie. It's just not realistic. And I imagined you being like, how so? And I was like, straight men learning and evolving emotionally when it needs to, like, in real time. I just don't buy it, but
that is solid. But I think I would have fought you more immediately because my views are that the zombie apocalypse is the most likely thing to happen.
Plausible, yeah. And I mean, that's kind of what I'm getting at, where I'm like, the one part about this that's unrealistic to me is that it appears whatever this incident is. I mean, we have Teresa Palmer and we have Dave Franco, and I would say that those actors are playing roughly 18 to like 28. So it's like we have roughly a 10-year span, which I suppose that's a decent amount of time. We'll let you know in another 4 years if you can build a wall that big in that amount of time, but
we won't be able to let you know because it's simply not happening.
It's literally falling over. Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
The wind blew it over.
Yeah, it's simply not going to happen ever.
The movie does sort of gloss over, and then that is another interesting factor about it, is it's a zombie movie, but that's not actually about the destruction. It's not about the fall of humanity. It's about rehabilitation, which is fascinating.
Well, that's why I like it so much as opposed to The Walking Dead, because there is movement forward. Like, they have a legitimate society. They're not being attacked from all sides by other factions of humans, because the point of the whole thing is people are trash. They are like a functioning society with homes and,
hierarchy.
Hierarchy. I appreciate that about this so much better than like other zombie things. It's like specifically The Walking Dead, but like, because like kind of 28 days later, actually they get to a point where there's kind of a hierarchy and they there's a happy-ish ending. But so I appreciate that about this, because that's the thing that made me quit The Walking Dead, is it was just grim and terrible 100% of the time. And I was like, at a certain point, you have to have established something deeper and more reliable than what you're doing. And they never did.
Is it still on, or is it?
Yeah, it's definitely still on.
Okay. Because I thought the end was coming, because I knew the ratings were going down, but...
Yeah, I don't know. Not yet, apparently.
So that's kind of what I meant when I was like, this brings something to the table that other zombie things don't, is that it shows you sort of like and then what? And frankly, the thing that I like the most is this introduces an element that has irked us with so many other zombie things, where you and me would be like, how are the zombies still around?
Right.
Wouldn't they starve or deteriorate or die out at some point? And it's a somewhat slapdash answer, but it's that they evolve past being a corpse, as they call them in the movie, into bonies, which are basically mindless, like, destruction.
Yeah, they're just like skeletons.
Demons, yeah.
Yeah. Like in Zombieland 2, where they ended up evolving into like another kind. They were calling them T-1000s or something.
And so I liked that. I thought that it considering this is, a relatively, because it's also runtime appropriate, considering this is a relatively short movie or small movie, it packs a wallop of like mythos. You know what I mean? You really feel immersed in this world. And, I'm not going to go as far as to say that I wish there were sequels or I wish this story took longer and stuff, because I think that would chip away at why it works as well as it does.
Sure.
But I was and am very impressed at how sturdy this world was built in the amount of time, and how much you just get it. Like, because you're introduced to it through Nicholas Hoult, through R's inner monologue. And it's very cleverly written, and it's very engaging right off the bat.
Yeah.
And also beautiful use of PG-13. I don't want the R-rated version of this movie.
Does it exist?
Well, yeah, it's gorier.
Oh.
No, meaning conceptually.
Oh, okay. I was like, did they release like a director's cut or something?
No. Instead of like viscera, instead of like red, we're dealing with brownish green, and it's like that's fine. And I think there's a playfulness and a whimsy to the movie that like a harder rating would just completely undermine.
It would swallow it up 100%.
And another thing about this movie that I kind of couldn't believe while we were watching it, but I was like, it's actually so well acted.
Yeah, Nicholas Hoult and Teresa Palmer are great.
I didn't dislike him, but he was never my favorite. And I actually think this movie, it was this and Mad Max that were really a turning point for me. Maybe he's one of those that I just needed him to get a little bit older.
Well, I mean, maybe for you, but I've been a fan of him since About a Boy when he was a literal child. So, yeah, I mean, I've thought he was excellent. Everything I've seen him in.
He does so much in this movie. And it's I'm trying to think of how to qualify it. It's like, it's not broad acting choices, but I mean, he's a zombie. So there's the standard amount of like Frankenstein-esque,
like grunting and stuff.
And lurching about. But the way he plays the comedy, like in particular, I just kind of laughed out loud when he was leaving the airplane the second time, and he just kind of twice stopped and started to turn back to her and then turned away again, because he's still just starting to become more human at that point. So you can see in his performance that he wants to keep talking, but he doesn't have the ability to. And so he just kind of keeps going. And she's another one where it's like, for some reason, I thought she was hacky, and I don't remember why.
Yeah, I'm not sure why either.
Is she in a Nicolas Cage movie where they're driving a car? That's Selena Gomez, isn't it?
No, you might be right.
What, Will?
It's Amber Heard.
Oh, is it Amber Heard?
Oh,
okay.
Amber Heard.
Well.
she's in that movie, I Am Number 4.
Is she? That was okay.
Yeah. But I most recently, I've always thought she looked like Kristen Stewart.
She does. She looks like Amber Heard and Kristen Stewart. Yeah, like merged.
For me, most recently, she was in A Discovery of Witches, which is excellent.
I do want to watch that, and you've said it was pretty good.
Yes, I like it quite a lot.
But she's one of the watching this, I'm like, I kind of wish she did more.
I just remember the first thing I ever saw her in, Daniel Radcliffe lost his on-screen virginity to her.
In what?
It's a movie called The December Boys.
Oh, okay. I think she was in Bedtime Story. That's another one of those movies.
She is in Bedtime Stories.
That's like actually weirdly good.
Okay, she is in a Nick Cage movie, but I don't think they're in a car, but it's called The Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Oh, she's in that?
With Jay Baruchel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Monica Bellucci is Morgan Le Fay in that.
Yes, she is.
It's not very good. It should have been too.
No, it's just okay.
It's funny because I was also about to be like, is she the one that's in Zombieland? But that's Amber Heard too. So here, call the Aquaman 2 producers.
Yeah, just replace Amber Heard. No one will notice.
And the acting and chemistry will improve.
She also is the one who's married to the guy from Scott Pilgrim, whose name I can never remember. Mark Webber.
Oh, the cute one that I like. Yeah. Because she was really good in this. And I can't remember the exact moment. But I can't explain to you how hook, line, and sinker I fall for the movie. Like, I fall for the romance. And I think the only thing that bums me out about the story is that this change in him is triggered by eating Dave Franco's brain.
Well, I don't know that that's the trigger, because it has to have triggered everybody. And it's just like, it's like the patience and understanding and love that comes from human connection. I don't think it's specifically Dave Franco, or it wouldn't have impacted everybody.
Because that was another thing that I find interesting about the movie is when we are introduced to Dave Franco, he seems kind of chachi.
Yeah.
But then by all accounts, his memories, he seemed like a good guy.
Well, I think he turned that way.
He was compromised by her father.
Well, he was compromised by her father and also losing his family. Like, because we see that one memory where he like finds his dad as a zombie. And so I think he went like too hard into the zombie killing business. Honestly, it kind of reminds me a little bit of in the Hunger Games, where like, this is going to be such a weird comparison, but like when Gale goes too hard about like killing the Capitol people. And it's a thing where like PETA was able to like maintain his humanity. And so that's like the disconnect, because she gives him that comment at the beginning where she's like, you sound just like my dad. And he's like, yeah, thanks. Like in a real way. And she's like, no, I was insulting you. Like that was definitely not a compliment.
When you said PETA and Gale 2013 just came screaming back to my head.
Me too. That's why I kind of laughed and was like, this is going to be a lot of things I'm about to say. You get my point, though.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because that goes back to what I'm talking about the mythos, the world building of this, because it does a lot with these characters. I mean, even Annalee Tipton is Nora is great in this movie. And she's not in a lot of it, but what she has, she's so necessary.
Yeah.
And again, she's so good. The scene with the two of them talking in Julie's bedroom. Annalie Tipton goes on this face journey. And do you remember who she is, who Annalie Tipton is?
Well, I know how I know her.
She was a Next Top Model contestant.
Oh, okay. I think I had forgotten that because she was in Crazy Stupid Love.
Yeah. You
and
weren't watching Top Model. Did you watch any of Top Model? Or was that just Brittany that watched it with me?
You made me watch the season with the girl that had Asperger's.
Right. Okay.
She's the only one I remember from that season, so the joke's on the winner, I guess.
Well, to that point, Annalie didn't win.
Yeah.
It's something that has happened. You know, we've had 20 years of reality TV at this point, and I do find it fascinating and a little bit nice that it has actually launched a few careers.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Kelly Clarkson and Carrie Underwood's aside, a lot of the people who ended up with real careers are not the buzzy winners.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think like Jamie Chung, she was on one of the more boring episodes or seasons of reality of The Real World. And I actually loved that season because people think it's boring because they didn't fight. Like everybody got along.
God, I can't explain to you how much I don't want to watch them fight.
That's why I liked it. Like, because that's why it was actually just like hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. And the other thing about Annalie was they do, on most seasons of America's Next Top Model, they do acting challenges.
Oh, okay.
And she was the winner. And the prize was a walk-on, like actually speaking role on The Big Bang Theory.
Oh my gosh, hilarious.
And she got to pick two of the girls to go with her. So she's in the episode. It still runs on TBS before, you know, Samantha Bee or whatever.
Yeah.
And she hasn't been in a lot, but she's good in everything she's been in. And
I'll just say Crazy Stupid Love is very good.
Well, and didn't she had a show on NBC that didn't last very long?
Yeah, because it was with that guy that we both like so much. It's called Manhattan Love Story. Jake McDorman.
Yes.
Yeah. It was like 11 episodes is what it says.
Yeah. It was really, really good. And I don't know how to get out of this hole. I was talking about the acting being good. And
yeah. Well, and we can't not talk about John Malkovich in this movie.
Well, it's a very John Malkovich role.
It's a very John Malkovich role in a very not John Malkovich movie.
Because I was going to go to Rob Corddry. I was going to be he's one of those. He's one of the ones that I think I don't like, but then I almost always do. I guess I merge him with David Koechner and a couple of the others. But
they are all very similar. Yeah, they're very similar. And Rob Corddry, for me, is like one of the least offensive ones because he does roles like this more often than not.
He also has that arc on Happy Endings.
He does have an arc on Happy Endings.
Jane's boss at the dealership. Yeah. And he has that relationship with Penny, remember?
I do. I remember all of that.
It's just a really good use of the ensemble.
Yeah.
So like we mentioned, it is pretty much Romeo and Juliet meets Beauty and the Beast. The story of it is that they're in a precarious situation and Nicholas Hoult, he saves Julie from being eaten and he like brings her back to an airplane that he lives in. And he's falling in love with her, so he's trying to come up with ways to keep her there. And as such, he's turning more human, and she starts to see that as well. And I think it's actually a really effective love story, too. I
think so, too. I think my biggest issue with like rom-coms is how little time they take, which is one of the reasons why I love When Harry Met Sally, because it is over the span of like 12 years. However, in this instance, it is like a life and death situation. So it's fine that it takes place over like less than the span of a week. Like I am fine with that. It's all life and death. Stakes are high. There's not a lot of, people left anyway. So it makes sense in this instance. And I think that the way they act it and the way it's written, it helps it all along the way.
And it is ambiguous. I mean, she could plausibly have been there for a month. You know what I mean? And
sure.
We don't know how long their journey back home would have taken and all that. So it's like you can sort of play with it. And I think their emotional connection and their chemistry evolves organically, that we don't feel lost in time.
Yeah.
Like we don't go from 1 to 10. You know what I mean? It's like,
of course. Yeah.
And I do also love the scene when he tells her that he's the one who killed Dave Franco. Because I remember the first time I watched it, I was wondering, and I was like, she's either going to be furious and storm out, or she's going to be like, I've known the whole time. And as what usually happens when I make a prediction like that, it's both.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay.
But they did it well. Like, she didn't freak out and shoot him in the head or anything, but she just was like, I need time.
She's such a well-written female character
She is, yeah.
In a genre and time that is very quick to give you like, storming out. And,
absolutely.
Yeah. Although she drove me nuts the whole goddamn movie because she doesn't put her hair up.
Oh.
And I'm like, they can smell you.
Yeah.
I was like, it's just like a pheromone factory.
Yeah.
I was like, put your hair up. It's beautiful. Believe me.
Yeah. I was like, do you really want Teresa Palmer to put her hair up? I'm not sure.
It is so many genres, too, because there's moments where it's effectively scary. There's moments where it's effectively dramatic. There's moments where it's effectively romantic. And there's moments where it's effectively funny. I mean, the music cues in this.
Yeah.
And I mean,
the soundtrack is excellent.
Yeah, there's a makeover scene set to Pretty Woman. And I really do love this movie. And I love the use of the dreams because they're so colorful. And especially the one dream where he realizes he's dreaming.
Yeah. Well, it also is it's such an interesting way after having tapped out Dave Franco while also having established that he's kind of shitty, to then give us a bunch of flashbacks that just show that he was actually like a really nice guy is a risky game in your rom-com. But it does end up working really well. And you're right about the colors. And I do also love the dream where he realizes he's dreaming. It could, because that's just it's such an interesting thing to think about as like a human person who dreams all the time, what it would feel like to get that back after having lost it for whatever reason. I find that fascinating. Yeah,
that goes back to what I was saying about the acting, the performances, where it's like, these are pretty lofty concepts that, Nicholas Hoult, and certainly not single-handedly. We just talked about how good everybody is, but it's like, there's a lot placed on his shoulders, Yeah,
I mean, he is, he and Teresa Palmer are the leads, but he has to do a lot more with a lot less, which is impressive.
I also love how thoughtful it is, because it's like, it takes itself very seriously. And that's frequently a criticism. Throughout the movie, we're kind of shown zombies here and there, just as like asides and stuff. And then at the end, there's kind of a montage of all of those zombies re-assimilating into society. And it's touching in a way that I don't think the movie has any right to be. Do you know what I mean?
No, but at the same time, it doesn't make me angry, because in some way, the movie, I think without trying, has actually earned it.
It really does. And I do love this game that we now play, it feels like, with PG-13 movies. And it's, are we going to get an F word? Are we going to get a fuck? Yeah. And if so, when and how? And this has one of the better ones, I think.
I'm not remembering it now.
Rob Corddry just goes, fuck yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And and I think that there's a hilariously cathartic ending where we're watching the zombies all be rehabilitated and society, it's a very life finds a way stuff. And then just tacked on, he's like, I mean, we had to slaughter all the bonies. They were just too far gone.
Yeah.
And he's like, but like, it was a good bond. And it's like, I just looked at you and I was like, I kind of feel like we're in a very that place, like sociopolitically right now.
Yeah.
Where it's like, there's an element of working together, but there's also a faction that needs to be shoved off a cliff. So
for sure. Absolutely.
There's no coming back from some things.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
And it's that, I won't even go as far as to say wicked, but it's that sort of like the combination of sweet earnestness and then sharpness or a bitterness that really kind of.
Yeah, because at the beginning, I laughed at the joke that he makes where he was like, I mean, I eat people too, but at least I feel a little conflicted about it. And you were like, you have laughed at that every time we've watched this movie. And I was like, it's funny. What am I supposed to do? It's funny.
It has this beautiful, happy fairy tale ending, and more Beauty and the Beast than Romeo and Juliet that way. And it does end with them blowing the wall up, which I was like, maybe.
You might need that for other reasons later.
I was like, maybe don't. I get the metaphor. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
So, yeah, that's pretty much really all I have to say. Did you have anything else that you can think of, or?
No, I mean, I 100% am on board with all the stuff you said, because this just really is one of those things, and we talk about it all the time. It's one of our favorite types of movies, is like the medium budget, medium movie, and I think that's just exactly what this is.
And genre, like it's
and genre, and it's just a perfect example of all the things it's trying to do. It's
a perfect movie for people who like scary movies but are afraid, like, because it's like you get all the thrill and excitement of a zombie movie with such minimal.
Yeah, like at no point am I actually worried for Teresa Palmer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I do love it too, and I do agree with you that I think it's because I don't watch it a lot, but it is just so fun, and it's so cute, and it is exactly what it wants to be.
There was a little bit of trivia. There's a company called Toner that makes dolls, and it's kind of like how Mattel makes Barbie.
Yeah.
And so the doll, her name is Tyler, and I always liked her because she's bigger than Barbie. She's about 15 inches tall, and she's very pretty. And they frequently are licensed. Like, they made a Wonder Woman. I showed her to you back when Wonder Woman came out.
Yeah.
She's more fashion doll. Like, she looks more like a fashion doll than the Hot Toys. Mm-hmm. Anyone who's listening to this knows I love dolls. So weirdly, this movie licensed them to make dolls. So there was an R and a Julie doll.
Oh my God.
I want to know who.
Yeah, who was like, this is going to be.
Who wanted that? Who were the people that bought that? And this company also made Big Bang Theory dolls, if that tells you anything. But
I mean,
that one I can strangely understand.
Yeah, that show at least was a juggernaut. This movie really came and went.
And the people watching that show, I could believe, collect dolls.
Sure.
But the Venn diagram overlap for this one feels
much smaller, yeah.
So even Hot Toys, I mean, I would be surprised at such a small movie getting a Hot Toys license, but I'll see if I can find some pictures. They were weird. So on that note.
All right. Well, as always, you can find us on Twitter at So I'm Watching, Instagram at So I'm Watching This Show. We are also on Patreon. I totally forgot what I was trying to say. And you can find a link to that on our website, soimwatching.com. And then other than that, you can rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen. And that's it for us.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yes, happy Valentine's Day. Go watch a zombie movie with your loved ones.